I want to talk a little bit about what Ryan Day, the Ohio State coach, had to say about playing Georgia in Atlanta. And excuse me, this is something that I think is really true. He said, you know, we always look at Georgia and look how they do things in the off season, sometimes during the season. To say that we're knee deep in a game plan, I can't tell you that. We watch them from afar. They have very, very good players in scheme. Certainly on offense, Stetson does a great job all the time. Got a lot of respect for the way he plays. Certainly, they put a lot of stress on you with multiple tight ends and skill players. And he says this. He says this is I think the most important quote. He says, "You're playing the defending national champions in their backyard, so it's going to take everything we have to go on the road to win this game." Hey, first of all, I'm not sure how on the road it's going to be. And I'm not being that guy. I don't really participate in the sort of false narratives and then break, blah, blah, blah. Ohio State's going to have 17,000 people at this game. It could be a few more, it could be a little fewer than that, but it's going to be in that universe. And Mercedes Benz holds about 70,000. So, they're going to be outnumbered, Ohio State. This is not going to be a true road game. This is going to be something like, well, it'll be like Indianapolis last year, where Georgia, obviously outnumbered Alabama, but Alabama had plenty of fans in Indianapolis. I mean, that was probably 70-30. This will be something like that. 70-30 is not a road game, but he's right. It's going to be a tough one for Ohio State for a lot of different reasons. I mean, for some of the stuff that I just read to you, I mean, again, he's talking about, um, the tight ends at Georgia, Stetson Bennett. Um, you know, there's a lot that has that Georgia folks don't seem to give their own team credit for, that other folks look at and say, hey, that's going to be a problem for us. Hey, by the way, real quick, you can get these Talk Turvy to Me shirts over at our friends at Red Zone. Go in there now, like, and get your Christmas gifts today. They've got a couple of dog instructions hanging out. I have a very limited amount of these Kelee Ringo-Signed ones. I think I have maybe 18 of them left. So by the time you see this, they may be gone. I don't know, but dog instruction is still available. I'm running out of those as well. So get those now. We've got a time crunch. Now's the time to do it. But our friends at Red Zone will be there until Christmas Eve. And but I wouldn't push it. I would go in there and get your stuff now. Get it now, and you can send it out. Ryan Day's not wrong about the challenge that Ohio State's got in front of them. He goes on. He goes on to say this. It's kind of in Georgia's backyard, but what an unbelievable opportunity for us to go down there and play in an electric atmosphere. When you get to this point in the season, this is the important part. This is what you're going to do. You're going to be in these types of environments. If you said at the beginning of the year we got a chance to be in the college football playoff and then play in Atlanta against Georgia down there, defending champs, of course you'd cut off your right arm for this opportunity. So we'll do everything we can to prepare to play our best football. Couple things. I do wonder if he pronounced the second T like people who are not from Atlanta. You don't want to go too hard on the T's, y'all. It's just it's Atlanta. You don't. No one says Atlanta. Like there's soft T's, and the second one doesn't exist. So let's get that straight out of the way. For our friends from Ohio, of which there are plenty that live in Georgia, they know it's Atlanta. It's not Atlanta. Oh God. Secondly, I don't know about this right arm stuff. Ohio State a week ago was in position to play in the Fiesta Bowl, or 2 weeks ago, and they got their teeth kicked in by Michigan at home. No, they don't want to play Georgia in Atlanta. They probably don't want to play Georgia, generally speaking. I don't think if Georgia had to pick, they'd pick Ohio State to play. So, I mean, if you could avoid one of these two matchups in the first round, you would do that. But, part of what he's saying is right. He's not saying it the way I am, because I have no filter and he does. Um, this is going to be a challenge. Like if Ohio State wins this game, this will be one of the best wins that Ryan Day has maybe ever had as a head coach, because he's had some pretty good wins. Like they blew Clemson out a year after, they had a really tough loss to Clemson. They blew them out, and then they got their brains kicked in by Alabama. Some of the games against Michigan, but in part, he keeps talking about defending champions. Jordan Davis is not on this team. Neither is Trayvon Walker and Nakobe. So yeah, Georgia's the defending champions, but it's not the same team from a season ago. If it was the same team from a season ago when they were playing this game in Atlanta, you're talking about Georgia would probably be a 10 or 12 point favorite. They're not. They're a 7 point, 6.5 point favorite. So to me, I think if you're Ryan Day, some of this is just talking points and so forth. But it is a challenge. The reality is what he's saying is not completely incorrect. Just the part about the right arm, you know, they'd rather play Georgia in Phoenix. They just would, or they'd rather play in Atlanta against TCU, or some of this is hyperbole because they're happy. Ohio State's happy to have gotten in. I think a season ago, Michigan certainly was happy to be there. They rented there's a huge booster that of Michigan that's tied in with the Dolphins. I think it's the owner, and he had a big event uh, at the Dolphins stadium after the game, and a lot of Michigan alums stuck around, and they just watched their team get their brains beaten in, and they were having a fundraising event. They were having a party. Ohio State, I don't think is quite going to be that way, but there's going to be some of that because of the bullet they dodged. I mean, if USC wins Friday night, SC comes to Atlanta as an 18-point dog, and Georgia probably beats them by close to 20, something like that. That game would not be competitive because they couldn't stop Georgia. Ohio State, it's a different ball game. Ohio State can score. They've proven that. Ohio State can, this is one thing you want to be careful of, and I need to go watch it more. I'm going to watch it more today at lunch. But, there is a particular amount of dislike from Georgia folks towards Ohio State. It's kind of silly, I think. But there's also a fair amount of respect towards Ohio State. They understand that brand. Well, that brand is not necessarily this team, and that's a pretty big distinction. That's not a distinction without a difference. That's a pretty big deal, actually, because with Ohio State, the brand, they're always good. They're always knocking on the door. I mean, they've been the second best program in college football. They only have two national championships to show for it, but that's as many as Florida, Clemson. It's just not as many as Alabama. But this century, there's really not been a lot of times where Ohio State's not been knocking on the door. Okay, I'm going to just I'm just going to talk about that for a second, because if you don't recognize that, you're being a little bit naive. I mean, Georgia has had a great century of football. Ohio State's has been better. They won the national championship in the Fiesta Bowl. Then they played in the Fiesta Bowl again. Then Alamo. Then Fiesta. Then back-to-back national championship games. They lost, but they played in them back-to-back. Fiesta Bowl again. Rose Bowl in 09. Sugar Bowl. Gator Bowl when they were 6 and 7. That's it. Obviously, they did not. They went undefeated and did not play in a bowl game because Urban and them took over a program that was under sanctions. They lost the Orange Bowl to Clemson, and then they won the Sugar Bowl. They won the College Football National Championship in 14, and then they won the Fiesta, lost the Fiesta, won the Cotton, won the Rose, lost the Fiesta, won the Sugar, and then lost the National Championship game. They won the Rose. Georgia doesn't have that kind of record. I mean, Georgia has a really good record. Georgia is probably, I don't know, fifth this century, maybe sixth or seventh. I'm not sure, but they're way up there. I would take Georgia's century over Florida's. I'll tell you that right now. But Ohio State's brand is what I just read off to you. A lot of Fiesta Bowls, some sugar, or a sugar or two, the Rose Bowl. I mean, they've won every. I think they've won every single. They won the Rose, the Sugar. They've won they've won the Fiesta. They've won the Rose. They've won the Sugar. They've won the Cotton. So they've won all four. They've won four of the the New Year's Sixes, and they won a national championship, and they played for one. They are basically exactly Georgia. In this time, they have not won an Orange Bowl, but Georgia's not won a Fiesta, right? And Georgia's not won the Cotton. So Georgia's won the Orange, and Georgia's won the Peach. These guys have played in the Orange, Sugar, Fiesta, Cotton, Rose. They're only missing the Peach Bowl. That's it. Well, they're about to play in the Peach Bowl, right? Georgia's not played in the Fiesta, but they've played in the Rose, Orange, Peach, Sugar. They've not played in the Cotton or the Fiesta. So these are huge brands. These are huge monsters on the national scale, on the national scene, I should say. But is this Ohio State that? I don't know. I'm slightly skeptical they are, only because of the last part of this season. I mean, and I'm overdoing this. I understand that. I'm going to go back and watch them play Iowa. I'm going to go back and watch them play, Northwestern. But I just don't know how fair the Northwestern game has anything to do with what's going to happen on New Year's night, because it's not going to be outside. It's not going to be in Chicago. It's not going to be windy. I do wonder if they're not going to be able to run against Georgia. And if you can't run against Georgia, it becomes tough to win. So it is going to be a challenge for Ohio State to go down to Athens and win this game. It is. But they get their chance. And I think Georgia should be very prepared for a motivated group of Buckeyes and tens of thousands, maybe, of their fans. They have a great fan base. They will be in Atlanta. You'll see.